Hello, class. The second comic book, or graphic novel, whatever you want to call it, that we're going to be looking at is The Crow by James O'Barr. This is one of the comic books where you have your artist and your writer are the same person. And so first, I just want to give you some background on this comic to know what to expect. James O'Barr was, and I've linked a video interview with him, but the short and sweet version is, or not so sweet, is that he was an orphan. His mom was some kind of drug addict. She gave birth to him sometime at home between Christmas and New Year's. Then just took him to the hospital, I think on New Year's Day, and was like, "Here, I don't want this baby." And they don't really know what his birthday is, so they just said it was on New Year's. He grew up in some orphanages, foster homes, whatever. They were pretty rough. Some pretty bad things happened to him. And, he felt his life was pretty miserable. He said from the interview, and I quote, "It felt like God was standing on my neck, and I was just trying to run this race of survival. And if I could just get to the finish line, maybe life will get better." And that happened to James O'Barr in high school. He was kind of a very cynical, dark, kind of mean guy because of growing up, as an orphan and, the abuse that he withstood. He was adopted. His parents wouldn't let him draw because they were kind of a hard-working Southern family. They didn't see value in art. And so he had to do it at school. He had to do it in the libraries. He's completely self-taught. And he fell in love with a girl who he described as being, I think her name was Beverly, as being completely light, wonderful person. And complimented him because he was dark, kind of made him a better person. They fell in love. They were together for 2 or 3 years until they graduated high school, and then they were still together. And they were engaged. They were going to be married. He was kind of broke, and his car insurance had lapsed, so he didn't want to drive his car. So she was going to come see him, and as she was walking to her car, a drunk driver was doing 70 in a 35 and went off the road and hit her and killed her on the sidewalk. So the next 10 years, he took part in a number of self-destructive behaviors, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. I think he worked as a car mechanic at a car dealership. And he would work, and then he would come home from work, and he would work on this comic book and this comic book alone, didn't have any friends, didn't socialize, and he did that for 10 years. So this comic book is a 10-year love story, a representation of what he felt for Beverly. And that's what The Crow is. So just a little background first. Crows are older. They represent some of the oldest gods, far older than the Christian God, far older than many gods we have. And so, crows have to deal in, several religions and, several continents with the idea of fate, with destiny, with the idea of the afterlife, with the idea of death, revenge, all of these concepts, which you can read about inside the comic or do some light research on your own. And so basically this thing's in black and white. It's a lot to do with good and evil. It's a revenge tale. The main character is, seeking revenge. And one of the main elements of this as well, besides the Crow mythology, is film noir characteristics. And if you're not familiar with film noir, it has to deal with old kind of black and white detective films. And I'll email you the characteristics, but I'll give you the ones that are mainly in this too. You might think, when you think film noir, think Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, if you've seen those films. You usually have a main character who has some kind of flaw. Either he's an alcoholic or he's self-abusive or whatever. He's trying to figure out a mystery, or he's trying to right some kind of wrong. He is very moral, and so therefore he doesn't fit in with the rest of the city. Usually some kind of trench coat wearing alcoholic detective. Now in this case we have a trench coat wearing Eric Draven, the main character, who is trying to avenge the murder of Shelley. The mystery he's trying to find is he's trying to find out where the guys are that raped and killed his fiancée in front of him. Another characteristic of film noir is that you have the city is almost like a character. The city landscape is overwhelming and almost seeks to envelop all the characters, and it represents how the sin and darkness of a city and crime and all that stuff almost swallows everybody up whole and corrupts them or destroys them. So you'll notice the overwhelming cityscape is always in the backdrop, and this takes place in Detroit. That's where James O'Barr is from, and some of the drawings of the cityscape are actual streets in Detroit. Another characteristic of film noir is that you have a lot of really stark contrast between really dark areas and really light areas. So it's a lot of black and white, it's a lot of shadows, it's a lot of darkness with just small areas illuminated in light. So you're going to see that as well. The whole thing's in black and white, and you'll notice that when we get flashbacks to when he's with Shelley, his fiance that was murdered, you know, Eric Draven and Shelley are drawn in really soft lines and a lot of light colors. And then when you're back in reality, when you're back in the present tense of, you know, Eric Draven, now called the Crow, who's trying to go around and kill all these bad guys, you get a lot more darkness, a lot more straight lines, less soft lines, more stark lines and precise lines. So those are some of the main characteristics. Another thing that you want to look for as you read this comic is it is chock full of pop culture references, musical references. There's poetry in it, both famous poems by famous poets and then poems written by the author himself. Eric Draven, the Crow, the main character, speaks in almost nothing but poetry. This thing is, out of all the comic books, to me, this is more like a work of literature. I mean, it is beautifully done. It is complex. There's biblical allusions, there's poetry, there's references to Shakespeare. You know, there's just all kinds of amazing things in it. And I'll have a video interview on YouTube from the author. And just a little side note, just something you might know, if you know who Bruce Lee is, one of the most famous martial artists that ever lived, who defeated Chuck Norris in single combat, who was undefeated in tournament combat, who was killed under mysterious circumstances. His son played the Crow in the crappy movie version of this during the 90s, and his son was killed during the making of this film under mysterious circumstances as well. A little fun fact for you. But this is my absolute favorite comic book in the world, and I really hope that you like it.